Hello, everyone. This is Robert, and I'm with Slaughter Free Chicago. And so the AR Rebels video series features people that have contributed to the Slaughter Free Chicago campaign in their own unique and powerful way. AR Rebels is a collaboration between Slaughter Free Chicago and the Red Lettuce Show, which you can follow on YouTube. Our third guest is Meghan Boyles, a new vegan activist who joined Slaughter Free Chicago last year to help shut down the Cialis slaughterhouse run by her landlord. Meghan is here today with us to tell us what it is like to live right next door to a slaughterhouse in Chicago. Meghan, welcome to the show.
Hello,
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, very good. So here we are, less than 24 hours after the big story broke, the WGN News story, which aired live on WGN News at 9 last night. And we had a discussion before that. We speculated about what the show was going to be like. We hemmed and hawed. We worried about how the coverage was going to look. So I know how you felt a little bit uneasy leading into it, but now that it's out there and you've seen it and you've seen a lot of people react to it, how do you feel about it now?
It honestly went so much better than I thought it would. I am really happy with how the story came out. And going into it, I was really concerned because I didn't want to get hate comments. I didn't want people messaging me and stuff like that. But I've had a much better reaction than I thought I would. And honestly, the hate comments are just so dumb that I don't even care about them. It honestly went so
Right.
much better than I thought it would.
Meghan, you still with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, sorry about that. I'm trying to see if we have any comments coming in on Facebook. So I'm just checking that out as we speak. And I'm not very tech savvy, but I'm trying to make this work. So what I think would be interesting to people that are watching that know more about our campaign, those people, on our page, is to tell a little bit about the backstory of how you ended up in this apartment. And the news segment was just like a 3.5 minute thing. It didn't really talk about the whole backstory. Tell us a little bit about how you found this place and under what circumstances you found it. I think that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I am 22 years old. I just graduated from DePaul last year, and I was looking for my first apartment out of college. Didn't really know what I was doing. And I was put in a situation where I had about a week to find an apartment. Long story, but I was in a crunch for time. So I went on Zillow and I just toured a bunch of apartments and I signed a lease for the first one that I thought looked okay. I didn't think there was anything wrong with the apartment. I had a realtor show me around. I specifically asked her if there was anything wrong with the apartment. I know she was trying to sell the place, but she told me there's no problem with noise. She told me the only complaint is that there's no central air and no laundry in unit.
Okay.
So I signed the lease.
Yeah. And when some people have asked, they've said, well, didn't she know that she was moving into a building where there was a slaughterhouse? And obviously you didn't know. The building doesn't look like, the front of it doesn't look like a slaughterhouse. It looks like a meat market, right?
Well, yeah. So people, a lot of people are asking me how I didn't know. And what I say to that is, why would there be a slaughterhouse in Bucktown? Why would there be a slaughterhouse in the city? I did not in a million years think that that place would be there. I thought that slaughterhouses like were on like farms like in the middle of nowhere, you know? Like you never think of there being slaughterhouses in the city where people live, especially on Armitage, which is a busy street. And like, why would it just be out in the open right there? Like, I never thought that that was even a possibility that a place like that could be there. I thought, I mean, I knew there was a poultry store, but I did not think that they were actually killing animals inside. And I did not know that my landlord owned that place.
Right. Yeah, I mean, who would expect to find a slaughterhouse in a building that is a residential building with several apartments, and you know, there's nothing but a wall between you and the kill floor, and there's a window there which you can open, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, why would they do this? Why would they have this setup? I mean, so go ahead and tell us more about, like, I'm sure you quickly discovered and it was that it was the case. So go ahead and continue if you would.
Yeah. So when I found out, I was just devastated. I was already a vegetarian. I had been a vegetarian for 10 years at that point. So,
Mhm.
of course, just my luck, I moved into the place with a slaughterhouse next door to it. And I was just so upset. I cried so much. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me. And I just, for a few months, I was embarrassed because I felt stupid. Like, how could I not know that it was there? I mean, I'm not blaming myself anymore, but I was embarrassed at first and I didn't want to tell anyone because I had been saying, like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm getting this new apartment, blah, blah, blah. But obviously, it didn't work out too well.
Yeah. And then I think you said that in order to pay your rent, you actually had to go into the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could mail it, but that's kind of dumb to mail a check to next door. So I would have to go into the slaughterhouse every month to pay rent. And it was just traumatizing going in there. And I just never thought that I would have to go into a slaughterhouse to pay my rent. First of all, I didn't know the slaughterhouse was there when I moved in, and I did not know that my landlord also owned the slaughterhouse. Never in a million years did I think that I would have to go into a slaughterhouse every month to pay my rent.
And then you later learned that the realtor, to just make this even more bizarre, the realtor lives right close by, right?
Yeah, the realtor, I learned this a few weeks ago, so this is completely new information to me. But the realtor who pretty much lied to me about there not being anything wrong with the building, she lives like on the same street on the other side of the slaughterhouse and has the same landlord who also owns the slaughterhouse. I'm pretty sure.
That's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay, from your apartment, you told Ben Bradley of WGN, I know he interviewed you about this, but you actually constructed like a soundproofing wall to try to block out as much as possible the sounds of the chickens screaming and crying and the sounds of slaughter.
Yeah, I did. So I went to the craft store, I got some foam, got some glue, and I glued these foam cubes to some cardboard to make like a foam wall. took me all day, and it barely works because I can still hear the noises of the chickens. So I was glad to see that on WGN, actually, because I'm glad that my foam wall is finally getting the credit it deserves, because
Yeah,
I spent a very long time making that foam wall.
yeah, I can imagine. And and so not only could you hear like the sounds, but you could there's obviously the smell of dead, dying, death. There's just the smell of dead animals, which has got to be, especially in the summer, has got to be particularly gruesome.
Yeah, so in the winter, the smell isn't really there as much, but the hotter it gets, the stronger the smell gets, and the apartment gets very stuffy, and I can't open a window because I don't want to let the smell in, and I don't want the sounds to get louder from opening a window. So my apartment just constantly, like, it has this like musky, stuffy feeling to it, and I have to spray it with room spray and stuff. It's just terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, a friend of mine, I mentioned to you that a friend of mine owns a house that she bought, oh, 30 years ago, and it's two blocks away from Cialis, and she used to walk her dog, and she said that the place used to be like you didn't even want to walk your dog anywhere around it, that it was really filthy, and there was blood out in the alley, and the garbage was overflowing, and so they probably got a lot of complaints over the years, I imagine, and cleaned up their act a bit. But I personally went out there, and Adam and I, we documented and filmed the delivery of birds because you told us about when they get deliveries. So we went over there at midnight, and they were just like clockwork. The truck pulled up, and we just documented the whole thing. And fortunately, Ben Bradley and WGN News aired some of that footage and showed just how miserable the conditions are for these birds and just how brutally they're treated. You couldn't even go out there. You could hear this, but you couldn't even bring yourself, when a delivery would come in, you couldn't even bring yourself to basically look because it would just be too much for you.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's very, especially when the deliveries happen, it's very, very loud, and it's just disturbing.
Yeah, right. Uh, so something developed just after this aired. This happened to me too. So when we got this story about Chicago Live Poultry getting shut down by the Department of Public Health, and the story went out in Chicago Black Club about it, and our organization Slaughter Free Chicago is mentioned in the link to our website. We got a call the next day from someone who lives right behind the alley from the slaughterhouse, where the deliveries are made and where the dumpsters are that are overflowing with garbage that have blood flowing into the alley. Just a gruesome scene all the time, most of the time, I would imagine. And this woman called and told us how grateful she was that we were doing what we were doing and if she could help us in any way. A similar thing happened to you today, right? In response to
Yeah.
the WGN News segment.
Yeah. So someone reached out to me saying that him and his wife used to live in an apartment next to Ciala's Poultry 17 years ago. And he said that they had problems with them, and they just like, he said that his wife was like traumatized from hearing the chickens, just the same thing that happened to me. So I'm hoping that he can help in some way get them shut down as well.
Yeah, they could be useful in terms of being witnesses, I suppose. But we'll have to see about that. We'll have to see where things go with Cialis. One of the things I didn't like about the coverage was the fact that the zoning official was quoted about the zoning law saying that Cialis was grandfathered in, or that it was exempt from the 200-foot restriction. And it's just not true from a historical standpoint. The 200-foot restriction was passed in 1990. It is true that in 2012, it became part of the zoning ordinance and then responsibility of the zoning review board. Prior to that, though, it was the responsibility of the Department of Public Health to enforce the 200-foot restriction, which they failed to do in the case of Cialis and 8 other slaughterhouses. In other words, we would have 9 less slaughterhouses if the city had done its job in this case, and we would have only a couple left. So that's pretty maddening to me, and that fact that WGN, well, we entered a correction. Some people entered a correction to tell them the history of this law, and that it's been around for a lot longer than they thought. So anyway, that was my only regret. Was there anything else about the coverage? Any other thoughts you might have about it?
I just want to specify that I am vegan, and I've been vegan since I moved in there.
Right.
Prior to that, I was a vegetarian for 10 years. So I saw a lot of comments saying like, oh, it's hypocritical to not want to live next to one of these places, but then still buy meat from Jewel and Mariano's and have a turkey on Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. I don't eat meat, and I haven't eaten meat in 10 years. So I'm not being hypocritical. I don't want any slaughterhouses, but especially not this one.
Yeah, right. That's a good point, because someone just mentioned that the volume is a little low, so I'm trying to speak up a little bit more. And I just got a notice saying my connection is unstable. Great. But
I can hear you.
That was a good point. Good. Yeah, I think some people on Facebook are having a hard time hearing us, so maybe speak up if we can. But yeah, you became vegan in the process, in this whole experience of living in this apartment, from what I understand. So you were vegetarian beforehand, but then you went in. And what I've seen about you, which I find remarkable and really wonderful, is how you when you first approached us for help, you were kind of cautious and not sure about how much you wanted to get involved. And flash forward to like February, when we were at the city council meeting where you and I and 3 other Slaughter Free Chicago activists were chosen in a lottery to give public comments. And we all chose to talk about why slaughterhouses need to be closed down for a variety of reasons. And you came up with a brilliant presentation that, people really, complimented you on. So I've seen you come from one point to really having evolved and now being really active, and I just think that's so great.
Thank you. When I first reached out to you, I was still in the stage where I was embarrassed of having moved next to that place, not knowing what it was. And the longer I lived there, the more I just felt like I had to do something to cancel out the fact that I'm giving money to this guy who owns this slaughterhouse. I need to do something to get this place shut down. And I did become vegan after I moved in there, but I was thinking like, I'm in such a unique situation that not many other people experience, and I can take that experience and use it to make a change.
Yeah. Well, you've done, I've just seen you evolve, and I really appreciate uh, everything that you've been able to do up to now. So thank you for that. And I just want to reach out to our people watching here to see if they have any questions before we kind of wrap up here. Maybe just give them a minute to see if anybody has a question or not. You can always post later if you miss this, and we'll try to catch up with you and answer comments later. We're getting some engagement, but so far no comments, which is fine. So Meghan, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it, and let's continue the fight.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.